News surrounding the new Nintendo next generation console are ramping up, ladies and gentlemen. It would seem as though the Nintendo Switch 2, or whatever it ends up being called, is imminent in its announcement, and its launch will likely happen sometime in 2024. And this is further evidenced by the fact that Nintendo is showing the console around to developers and to certain outlets behind closed doors. Now, back in July of 2023, on the very last day of July 2023, Video Games Chronicle relates some early information that they obtained from sources about the next generation Nintendo console, which is set to release sometime in the second half of 2024. At least that's the current plan. And Nintendo wants to make sure that they give the development of the Switch 2 enough time so that they'll have ample stock on day one to maximize launch sales. But beyond that, it was confirmed that the Switch 2, and the reason it's being called Switch 2, we don't know the official name of the device, but the reason rumors call it that is because it is going to feature a portable mode similar to the Nintendo Switch. So it looks like that kind of form factor will be reutilized and will be kind of enhanced upon. Beyond that, we apparently know, based on sources, that the new Nintendo Switch, the Switch 2, will feature an LCD screen instead of an OLED screen, which likely is to bring down cost, though a bit of a shame because OLED screens, just the colors pop a lot more. But, you know, as long as it's a high quality enough LCD screen, it'll be fine. And then beyond that, it has been confirmed that the next Switch will have compatibility with cartridges, so physical games will still be a thing, though whether they're increasing the sizes of cartridges in terms of storage space, because games are going to get bigger the more advanced they get, that remains to be seen, though I imagine that, you know, it seems like an obvious thing to do. There's still some things that are unclear about the console, like whether it'll be backwards compatible, but I personally cannot imagine a scenario where the Nintendo Switch 2, especially because the form factor is so similar to Switch 1, won't feature backwards compatibility with old Switch cartridges. And I imagine that your digital library of games will carry over as well. We are in an era where that kind of continuity from generation to generation is expected. And beyond Video Games Chronicle, Eurogamer not only reported on what Video Games Chronicle talked about in their article, but they also said that their own sources also expect a launch in the latter half of 2024, and I've been hearing similar things. More recently, Eurogamer reported, based on information from their own sources, that the Nintendo Switch was actually present at this year's Gamescom, which happened not long ago. In an article headlined "Nintendo Demoed Switch 2 to Developers at Gamescom ahead of widely expected launch next year." There was a behind-the-scenes closed-doors presentation where they showcased a number of demos, and among them was a souped-up version of the Switch launch title, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, designed to hit the Switch 2's beefier target specs. So the game was likely running at a high resolution and at a higher frame rate, I imagine 60 frames per second. Now, it is emphasized here that this was just a tech demo. There is no confirmation or guarantee that the game will be re-released. Frankly, I would be shocked if Nintendo were to go with the re-release route for a game like Breath of the Wild instead of just releasing some kind of patch or update, so that when you play the game on regular Switch or Switch 1, it runs the way it does on that console, but when you play it on Switch 2, the game automatically recognizes that and upscales its resolution and increases its frame rate to match the now newly supported hardware. That's how I'd expect to do it. I'd expect this to be a free upgrade rather than a re-release, unless a lot of work went behind maybe upgrading the graphics or just doing extra bits of remastering beyond just upscaling the resolution and upping the frame rate. Then maybe you can charge a small fee for an upgrade. I guess only time will tell how Nintendo will approach that side of things. But either way, the fact that they are showcasing Zelda Breath of the Wild running on Switch 2 highlights to me that Nintendo is hinting at backwards compatibility being a goal, that they are planning to ensure that old Switch games can kind of be breathed new life into by allowing them to take advantage of the newer hardware and allowing them to look and run better on the newer console. Now, corroborating this information is Video Games Chronicle, who published the following article titled "Sources: Nintendo Showed Switch 2 Demos at Gamescom." They acknowledged that Eurogamer reported on this and that Video Games Chronicle can corroborate via their own sources. And according to Video Games Chronicle, Nintendo not only showcased Zelda Breath of the Wild upscaled and at higher frame rate, but also they showcased next generation, or I guess now current generation demos like, get this, the Matrix Awakens Unreal Engine 5 tech demo. This is a demo that I talked about in a video that I released months ago, and I was just so blown away by the photorealism of this demo that I just had to make a video about it, and I play the demo. That's the thing. This is not a tech demo that was shown via footage. This is a tech demo that is interactive, that even the public could get their hands on and see for themselves just how capable Unreal Engine 5 is at producing photorealistic images. So the fact that this next generation Switch or the Switch successor can run this demo at all and can run it seemingly pretty competently, I think is a sign that we're going to see a huge visual upgrade from Switch 1 to Switch 2, especially because the tech demo for Switch 2 was running using Nvidia's DLSS upscaling technology. Switch 1 already uses Nvidia hardware. Switch 2 will likely do the same, but this time hardware that supports AI upscaling that will allow the Switch 2 to not have to be as powerful as the bigger, not portable console counterparts PlayStation 5 and Xbox, but still upscale graphics and make them look sort of modern enough to run games at a high resolution, at a higher graphics fidelity, and at higher performance, even if the power is somewhat lacking. The DLSS technology here, I think, is going to be a big deal. And with this technology, Nintendo could activate ray tracing on this demo, and apparently the end results were visuals comparable to Sony's and Microsoft's current generation consoles, though Video Games Chronicle made it a point to highlight that this does not mean that the Switch successor will be as powerful or anywhere close to as powerful as PS5 or Xbox Series X, which makes sense because the Nintendo Switch 2 will also be about as small as the Nintendo Switch, maybe like a little thicker, a little bigger to compensate for the more powerful hardware and for the ventilation that'll be required to ensure that heat dissipation is properly integrated. But generally, yeah, it's still going to be like a pretty small console compared to the towers that are PS5 and Xbox Series. But AI upscaling through DLSS will be able to compensate for the lack of power, at least compared to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Now, DLSS technology isn't perfect. Like, at a certain point, you will start seeing visual degradation if you push that technology too far. So I imagine that the Matrix demo won't look as good on the Switch 2 as it'll look on PS5 and Xbox Series. If you do a digital foundry style analysis, then you will likely see some of the visual degradations on the Switch 2 version because of its limited hardware. But generally, looking at it from afar, be it via its portable screen, which is smaller and which hides the visual degradations further, or even if you're looking at it through a big screen with DLSS technology upscaling implemented, like for the general public, the visual degradation won't be enough that it'll cause huge alarm. Not to mention that because Nintendo Switch 2 will be a dedicated console, it's going to be a lot easier to optimize for this one hardware configuration. So maybe DLSS can be further maximized compared to, say, PC, where there's still a bunch of different configurations that don't allow for the most optimal optimization. With a Switch, you can really kind of take that hardware and its DLSS capabilities and maybe push it really far because you can specifically tailor games for that specific hardware and for the specific technologies that will be implemented in Switch 2. And all of this falls in line with how Nintendo filed patents for potential AI upscaling technology plans back in March of 2020. Many presumed it was a preparation to implement the technology in the Switch 2. And now with this report from Eurogamer, it seems as though that obvious implementation ended up being the reality of what Nintendo's pursuits were. So yeah, what we do know now about the Switch 2 based on the more reliable sources and the more reliable rumors currently is that it'll use an LCD screen. There's going to be portable mode for it. It is going to have cartridges again, physical media, and it is going to have Nvidia hardware that will utilize DLSS technology for significant upscaling and for a significant modernization of visual fidelity. They'll be comparable enough to PS5 and Xbox, or maybe some of those third-party games that only come out on PlayStation and Xbox because of the hardware disparity between Nintendo's competition and its very dated Switch 1 hardware. With that gap a lot more close now, hopefully with DLSS, maybe we'll start to see a lot more of those higher fidelity graphics third-party games come to Nintendo's next-generation console, which would be very welcome, especially given the portable form factor of the Switch and the Switch 2. That'll make it a very convenient console to have just to carry around and take your games with you. Honestly, so far, the Switch 2 is sounding like everything I've wanted out of this console, which is great. Now, I'm curious as to whether Nintendo doesn't tend to just do your standard, higher fidelity graphics or better hardware than the previous generation, they usually try to come up with some kind of crazy, quote unquote gimmick or some kind of unique element to their next generation console that makes it stand out from the pack and that gives it that wow factor. I feel like the Switch 2 will come with quite a number of new features that will make it more than just a big hardware leap. It'll have certain functionalities that maybe will see us interact with games in unique ways, is what I'm thinking. But, I can't say for sure. That's just speculation on my end. Now, no matter how powerful the Switch 2 is or how well it leverages DLSS technology or what kinds of new functionalities it may have, ultimately, what sells a platform, a console, is the games. So Nintendo needs to have a pretty great lineup of launch titles just kind of at the ready for Switch 2, or at least one big, must-own game that killer exclusive like Breath of the Wild was for Switch. Though, if the backwards compatibility is there and the enhancements to old Switch games is there, then I think a big reason for people to switch to Switch 2, even if maybe we don't see that killer exclusive title at launch, will be to just kind of upgrade, to get their games running better and looking better on a new portable console that's just an enhancement to the one they already own. That by itself can be a pretty strong incentive, so backwards compatibility I think is a must. But if you can have that and that Breath of the Wild level kind of killer exclusive, or at least a pretty varied lineup of launch titles that will give players plenty of options, then the console will be set. But yeah, I'd be very curious to see what kinds of games we'll see at the ready for the console when it launches, seemingly in the latter half of 2024. In the meantime, though, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on everything you've heard about the Switch 2. Is it currently living up to your expectations and what you want out of the console? And also, in general, what are you looking forward to with this console that maybe hasn't been announced yet? What do you speculate will be featured on this console? Do you think it'll play it safe, or do you think Nintendo will do what they've done more often than not and add some kind of crazy new gimmick or something along those lines? And just what's your general outlook on the Switch 2? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.